TD Bank just got hit with a $3 billion fine.
There had to be somebody in there that was like, something's wrong.
Operation Token Mirrors. It is like straight out of the movies.
This is the new generation's pump and dump.
There is persistent corruption. That's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. 2 former Air Force officers defrauded the federal government.
How can that possibly happen?
And then the way that they're caught blows my mind. The way that they're caught is because financial crime is all over the headlines right now, man. And FBI is doing a bang-up job of bringing it down, which is such an encouraging thing because, let's be honest, we have seen so many failures of government in the last year, from assassination attempts, Secret Service, CIA issues, predicting what's going to happen in the Middle East. The government has been dropping balls all over the place, and it becomes mainstream news. But these incredible victories in the financial crime area are barely being talked about. One that has made headlines is TD Bank. Can you give us a quick explanation of what's going on with TD Bank?
Yeah, man. And, it kind of, gives me a sense of our people still on with comms, talking to each other about what's going on and where these particular types of jurisdictional venues/meetings are happening. And that to me is really important, as we know, because when we're talking to each other, good things happen. So TD Bank, plain and simple. There are items in the banking industry known as CTRs, which are cash transaction reports, which are basically anything over $10,000 withdrawal or deposit needs to be reported. It doesn't mean that there's a crime indicating that, but it's just a very simple procedure that every single banker, the first thing a banker learns when they become a brand new intern, a brand new banker is, hey, if I have something over 10,000, and sometimes even somebody who's going 99.90, 99.99, right? But if I have that $10,000 mark, what I simply do is, now it's computerized. I go on, I fill out a cash transaction report that says on this date and time, this person deposited $10,000, $10,100 in $100 bills and $20 bills. I took that, I signed a receipt, I gave that person a copy of the cash transaction report, and we moved on. At some point in time, should the bank see, and people at the bank, which is what we're going to talk about a little bit, you've got your CISO who's there, who's been there forever. He is not a career law enforcement guy. I imagine he's a smart dude, but how the hell he could let TD Bank go through this is amazing. But what happens at a point in time is they look at those particular CTRs and say, John Smith has now developed over 30 days, 15 CTRs. We're going to go ahead and develop that into something called a SAR, which is a suspicious activity report. And that indicates simply, there's no opinion, it's factual. They write it out and say, on these dates, this man brought in cash and he deposited or he withdrew it. We think someone should take a look at that. The job of the banking CSO or CISO is to simply compile those and go to a monthly meeting, which I can't speak for other districts, but I could speak for LA, I could speak for New York, I could speak for Jersey and Philadelphia and Boston. They have a monthly, sometimes even bi-monthly meeting where all the agencies sit down and review those SARs.
So what we're saying here, Jim, is there's a process for reporting well in advance suspicious financial activity at a bank. And the reason this is relevant is because TD Bank just got hit with a $3 billion fine. $3 billion with a B.
Mm-hmm.
And they pled guilty to engaging in money laundering activities, or activities that are effective and fruitful for criminal activities, specifically money laundering. So we have here an international bank, Canadian-owned TD Bank, that has pled guilty to acknowledging and accepting policies within its branches that essentially give an advantage to criminals, smugglers, people trying to defraud, child traffickers, weapons smugglers, cyber criminals. The list goes on and on.
All of the above.
And not only are they getting hit with the fine, not only are they pleading guilty, but the policies that they put in place, they skipped over these fundamental reporting processes that you just laid out.
Absolutely, Andy. And, the thing is, it is very basic reporting. This is nothing where we're talking investigative services. We're talking anything more than this is the rule. It's the banking rule. You need to fill these out so that things like this don't happen. From there, like I said, a U.S. Attorney's Office will get together with the agencies and split those up. And sometimes they open cases directly off of a SAR, off a suspicious activity report. And then that goes on to a full investigation, most likely starts as an assessment. And then from there, subpoenas are issued, and we start to kind of look at a couple different things to include the person that's actually performing the deposits or withdrawals, plus the bank,
So
right?
let's
Plus,
talk
what is
about
the bank doing? You
yeah,
know?
let's talk about a couple of the details here, right? Because it's really
Mm-hmm.
interesting to me. First, so TD Bank, man, I know TD Bank. I drive by them all the time, right? All over Florida, all over Colorado, all over California, all over Jersey, like you talked about.
Yep.
And I've always known them to be essentially the bank for like the everyday guy. That's how they were kind of set up. Because
Yes.
if you run a small business and you primarily deal in cash, TD Bank is where you go. They always had coin machines in the front lobby so that you could
Yes.
literally bring in
Yes.
your spare change and convert it into dollars with almost no fees. Like that was TD Bank.
Open
I
on Sundays too. They were
yeah,
open on Sundays. So,
my sister-in-law uses TD Bank. I mean,
mhm.
my mother-in-law has used TD Bank. Everybody I've known throughout most of Florida on the small business world, they all touch TD Bank.
Yep.
Well, all the same practices that made them friendly to the everyday transaction also made them friendly to people who had illicit intent. And some
100%.
of the things that were reported are mind boggling. People being able to directly deposit $1 million in cash. That is a one with 6 zeros behind it.
Yep.
You
Yep.
said they need to file a suspicious report if there's a one with 4 zeros behind it. So that's
Exactly.
a factor of 100 times more. And they were
Yep.
able to deposit it and withdraw in different ways, deposit it in
Yep.
cash, send part of it via wire transfer, send part of it via authorized check, send part
Yep.
of it via direct transfer. Like, holy smokes, dude. And
Yep.
they let this happen with transactions going to Venezuela, transactions going to Colombia. They let this happen with cash transactions. They let this happen in overnight transactions. Sometimes I
Mhm.
even saw that there were reports of employees who were being like bribed
Yes.
internally
Yes.
where the actual person with the account was giving away like $1,000 gift cards.
Yep. Has to be. That had to happen, right? I mean, there's no other way to do it. Trillions of dollars pass through these accounts. Trillions, not billions. Trillions of dollars pass through these accounts to the point where there was actually there was some evidence and some stories where people that were making these deposits who weren't doing the right thing, as we know, we talked about who they were dumping bags of cash on counters.
Oh my gosh.
And then the teller was going through and then figuring out what they needed to do, not filling out the basic CTR and just moving forward, right? And then the next day, this bad guy could take out whatever amount of money he wanted, like you said, in all the different ways he wanted to.
How did this get caught, Jim? Because that's one thing I haven't been able to find yet. How did they get the lead that ultimately turned into the investigation that brought TD Bank down on this?
Yeah, and my assumption, because I don't have any facts on how this actually happened, but my assumption is basically that eventually an honest or a diligent, more likely a diligent teller or bank manager said, "Whoa, wait a minute, how did we run $1 billion through this small branch of TD Bank?" And what are we doing? Let's kind of go back and talk about what we did and where we're at. Probably attended or asked to attend the SAR meeting and they're always held at U.S. attorneys' offices. So federal prosecutors, they're always held at those offices together with their money laundering, together with your asset forfeiture people, and they'll go over that stuff. My assumption is somebody came to light and said, "Wait a minute, there's something really wrong. We are running way too much money through these accounts, and we're not making the money that we probably should be making." Right, and that's how I kind of see it happen. What boggles my mind is there's someone sitting in every branch, or at least in every region, that might make up 10, 12 branches, that is responsible for their security. There's responsible, and not just their physical security, not just that there's a bank robbery or anything that's happened, but these kinds of things. Hey, let's take a look back and see what's going on. That wasn't happening. So there was actually some type of culture within this company where that just went away. No one ever talked about that. And you and I always talk about, and I know you talk to your company all the time, and we've talked to our people when we were in leadership positions about culture and how important it is. And being able to be there to talk to people about what the problems are and how we fix those problems. That never happened. And
Yeah.
they have a guy that runs the whole show. And I won't say his name, but I know him. And I cannot believe this has happened. But now that I'm seeing more and more information, I'm like, wow, this guy just completely 1,000,000% took his finger off the pulse. And these are the kinds of things that happen. So there had to be somebody in there that was like, something's wrong. and I'm not going to take the hit for this.
So I love this conversation because we're talking about a bank that is the everyman's bank. And we're seeing how, no matter how honest its intentions might have been, to be accessible, to be a cash bank, to be a bank that understands the needs of the everyday entrepreneur, right? I get that and I appreciate that.
Me too.
But you can see how it's being abused, which leads me to the next story that I think is really relevant and really interesting about FBI success. FBI ran this incredible sting operation against cryptocurrency pump and dump schemes. And I mean, Jim, when I read about this, it is like straight out of the movies, right down to the operation name, right? Operation Token Mirrors.
Yep.
Right. What an incredible name. Can you tell us about this sting operation? Can you tell us what FBI and DOJ did?
Yeah, amazing stuff. And you're exactly right. This is the modern day. This is the new generation's pump and dump. It's that simple, right? So it's using what they call wash investments to just keep rotating these investments around to do what? To make others look at this and say, whoa, this is something I want to put my money into, until it gets to the point where they're ready to pull the trigger on it. Now, much easier, because in my opinion, and this is the scary part, I feel like we shouldn't even be really talking about this, but much easier because I don't have to actually have any meetings. Hey, how you doing? Jim DiOrio with such and such company. I really like you to think about investing in that doesn't have to happen. Yeah. All that has to happen is we just need this. We just need to be able to generate a fake company. So those bad guys who did it, what did the FBI do? Some brilliant minds in the FBI. And I love that we're having some positive kind of movement for the Bureau. Because damn, we know they need it, right? So we know that. So there's some brilliant mind within the Bureau that said, well, if they could do it, I could do it too. And that's exactly what happened.
Did. Yeah. So FBI, we're talking about a pump and dump wash investment of cryptocurrency. So for those of you who don't know what that means, a wash investment, or what's sometimes also known as there's another word for it, Jim.
There is another word, and I'm losing it too, but it's like a reverse.
What it basically
continuing
means,
the same funds.
It basically means is you buy something with one currency, with one cryptocurrency, and then you buy something else using the cryptocurrency that you just bought, and you're basically continuing to buy and sell using this currency in order to create market demand that is artificial.
Yep.
Right? Because if you have a cryptocurrency called Jim Coin and I buy a bunch of Jim Coin, the law of supply and demand, which is automated in the cryptocurrency market, when I start buying Jim Coin, the price of Jim Coin goes up. So then when I start to sell Jim Coin, somebody else is buying Jim Coin and the price goes up again. And then I buy it back and then I sell it back and I buy it back and I sell it back. And they call these people market makers.
Yep.
Because they buy and sell in a certain currency and it makes a market for that currency.
And they control it. They control that market.
So FBI created their own currency and it was called Next Fund AI. It had its own website, it was own company. Like truly, Jim, a brilliant move. I can't imagine the bureaucracy that person had to go through.
Dude, I was just thinking that, right? Could you imagine those group one meetings, like they're sitting down at those boards and having to present it? What's the name again? What are we going to do?
And trying to explain to a bunch of 25-year-old veterans, like 25-year veterans in the FBI, like, no, it's a digital currency. We can't make a currency. No, it's digital. It's not real.
There's no certificate. There's no
Where are we going to get the coins made? No. Nobody makes the coins.
Been there.
But they create a company, they create a cryptocurrency, and then FBI engages these market makers to make a market for the currency. Holy smokes, Jim.
Amazing.
18 arrests.
Yep.
Across 3 different continents.
Yep.
And I think it's like 7 different companies that were engaged in this market-making activity. And
that's right.
$25 million in trackable washed money. Unbelievable, from a fake made-up currency.
Andy, it's crazy good. And as you and I both appreciate, because of the jobs we've done in different times in our career, what this does, the positive side of this for people that are listening is that we've now developed sources. Even though, these people are in trouble, they're going to work with us to get back on Team America in order to tell us exactly how they do it. So now, where there'll be the next scheme? Of course, there'll be the next scheme. But we've kind of have now a leg up, and that's what I love to see our agencies doing now is to being proactive. We always talk about being proactive. There's no reactivity to this. We made this happen, which I love. So we're doing good things out there again.
And there's, it's so important because the argument out there is that cryptocurrency is a good thing. That cryptocurrency is the future. That cryptocurrency it's like, it takes the middleman out. It's more honest. None of that is true. None of that is true. And not only have we seen cryptocurrencies be abused for illicit activity, not only have we seen cryptocurrencies be abused for things like funding terrorism, funding child trafficking. Like, is there a future for a digital currency? Yes. But is unregulated cryptocurrency the way that we're going to move forward? I would argue that the answer is no. And it's exactly for reasons like this, because the everyday investor who goes in honestly to try to make something positive out of their retirement account, trying to make something positive out of the money that their parents' death may have left them, right? The person who's trying to do something honest is going to be abused in this fraudulent world of cryptocurrency, wash schemes, and pump and dump, because it's all unregulated. Anybody anywhere can create a new crypto coin.
Yep.
And apparently now anybody anywhere can also make that crypto coin look like it's worth something when it's in fact
Andy.
Worth nothing. It's not a real currency.
And if we just relate it back for a minute to the TD Bank story that we just talked about, right? They're struggling there with books and pens and paper, just people looking at things, right? Not really think about now the criminal who moves forward to this digital world and how difficult it's going to be for us to track all of that goes on. And we can relate it back to when we talked about corruption. They're going to fly under the radar. They know where the radar is. And we just don't have enough people out there that can yet be able to go forward and get these things regulated.
Yeah. So we've talked about TD Bank, the everyman's bank, being abused and working against a national interest, working against criminal or working for criminal enterprise. We've talked about cryptocurrencies being abused and people being defrauded by these wash schemes, these pump and dump schemes, and how simple and easy they are. It's still complicated to create a cryptocurrency, but to create false demand for your cryptocurrency is shockingly simple, right?
Absolutely.
Because these aren't MIT graduates out there doing it.
Nope.
So financial crime after financial crime that's affecting the everyday person. And then the third case I want to talk about, Jim, is one of the most, for me, it hits home. I'm a former Air Force officer. I'm an Air Force Academy graduate. I spent a career with CIA and U.S. Air Force. I despise the way that we carry out government contracting. I do. We don't do it right. It is a necessary evil, the way that we do it right now.
Yep.
Because it involves huge sums of money and good old boy networks.
Yep.
And those huge sums of money come from the American taxpayer. Yep. And in this case, from 2019 to 2020, 2 former Air Force officers defrauded the federal government, which means everyday Americans, out of $12 million. And the U.S. Air Force had earmarked $27 million to give these guys. So can you give us a quick rundown? What happened in this case? What were these guys doing? How did they defraud? How was it captured, et cetera?
So they entered into, and I think it's very typical in the government contracting world, they entered into an advanced fee kind of situation, right? Where they would have that money set aside in trust as they told the Air Force, we're going to need to do research. We're going to need to hire subcontractors. We're going to need to do things before we can help you to make these investments and to make our money overseas, right? So that was the advanced fee scheme. So now they have access to all 27 million, right? But somehow or another, we fortunately caught them before they got to the point where the extra 9 had gone away. Very simple to me. When I look at this case, what bothers me most, and this happens across every branch of service, I'm sure it's happening in the Army as we speak, in the Navy as we speak. But what bothers me most is the inability for a government agency like the United States Air Force to have independent checks and balances. They allowed these 2 bums, right, to do their own accounting. So right there with never getting checked. Never. So doesn't there have to be, I know there does. I'm asking the rhetorical question, but I know there does. There has to be a regular audit and a meeting and a sit down to say, where is the money going? How have you spent this last part? What's our ROI on this? How are we looking with our investments? What's the progress? And it's very specific as to these briefs, which means the thing we're not hearing about is during these briefs, they lied to somebody over and over again. Never got polygraphed, which you and I know, that happens all the time, right? If you talk to somebody overseas, you're going to get polygraphed, especially in our business, right? But ultimately, my thought is, how does that happen? Well, I hate to go back to it, but there's some form of corruption within the officer, within the procurement officer who actually was looking at this and saying, well, let's let these guys go a little further. Well, you and I both know, what does that mean, Andy? It means somebody's getting helped out with that. Right?
Exactly.
Somebody's paying a little bit of money. So
to me, that's the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. There was one person who was willing to talk about it for a while.
Yes.
President Donald Trump, when he was president, talked about the way that government contracting was defrauding American citizens. And he talked about it openly. It caused all sorts of divide and divisiveness. And I get it. Trump is a divisive character. But he was dead right on this specific issue.
Absolutely.
Right? Because you're totally right. There is persistent corruption.
Yep.
Not of an organized criminal nature, not like some sort of massive deep state kind of conspiracy, but just individual to individual. Because when you spend a career in the military, you're never going to get paid more than what, $140,000 a year?
Yes, at most. Yep.
And then that you're spending 20 years in uniform just so that you can spend the last 10 years of your working life after you retire making as much money as possible. So that's exactly what these two guys did. That's exactly what happens in all government contracting. You retire at $140,000 a year as an 06, and then you come back in the next day as a contractor making 4 times as much. But the reason that you're valuable is not because of your skills. It's not because of your knowledge. It's not because of your expertise. It's because you know all the people who are still in uniform who actually have the signing authority to assign a contract to you.
Your reach back is powerful. Yep.
Exactly.
We know it's a short period of time that you have, right?
And that's what these guys did. So they got a $27 million advance fee, and then they spent $12 million. They spent $12 million
on their own credit card bills and travel.
In 1 year. In 1 year, they spent $12 million, and they say it went to payroll and it went to paying off debt. And then somehow, Jim, and I don't know how this makes sense, they said that they were waiting for returns from foreign investments.
Yes, it never documented, Andy. These foreign investments were, so I give you $27 million and never ask what you're doing with that money in order to create the program that we need, the Air Force needs or the Army needs or whatever. How can that possibly happen? Well, I think we hit on it.
And then the way that they're caught, what blows my mind, the way that they're caught is because they couldn't pay a subcontractor $3,000. A subcontractor had a $3,000 invoice. I mean, shit, Jim.
Always the way.
I pay 5 $3,000 invoices probably every 2 weeks.
Exactly.
And I am not making $27 million in this program.
No, it's true, though. I mean, it's always the way, right, Andy? It's always the way.
So a subcontractor missed his $3,000 payment, escalated it through the proper channels, and now 2 former Air Force personnel are going to jail at the age of 65 and 73, I think.
Yes, they're 65 and 73, and they're facing 10. So let's just say, they cooperate a little bit and get 48 months. Okay, if you're 73 and I'm 65, you really want to do that? You want to miss 4 Christmases? You want to miss 4 birthdays, 4 grandkids' birthdays? What is going on? What is going on there? But I think we hit on it a little bit. But just crazy, but great. Great work as to looking at it, following it through, but it needs to be better. And my thought, when we were talking about this early, doing this today, is always there's ways to do that better. You have to be proactive. You have to be on top of this stuff. You have to have people who care and understand why CTR is important in one case, why crypto and what's going on, how it works, and why people are looking to rip people off, and ultimately why contractors with huge lucrative potential contracts need to be independently audited. I'm not saying you have to go out and get a top 5 accounting firm, but you need somebody else looking at your stuff. I want that because it keeps me honest. I don't know. I'm not an accountant. I don't understand. Why would I want to look at that myself?
So let me ask a funny question, Jim. Because one of the things that's interesting to me is always how the law is set.
Mm-hmm.
Laws are made, through legislation. Laws are enforced, but there's this concept called fraud. And fraud has 1,000 different faces. And we just talked about 3 cases. TD Bank was engaging in fraudulent activity. The market makers for cryptocurrency were engaging in fraudulent activity. And now we have these 2 contractors for the Air Force, again, defrauding the Air Force out of funds.
Yep.
Why is fraud illegal? Like how does the Department of Justice see the term fraud, and why is that an illegal practice?
Willfully garnering something that you're not entitled to through a continuing progression of crime. When I say that, doesn't mean it has to be an overt crime. Doesn't mean I have to go out and say, "Give me that friggin' contract, or I'm going to beat you over the head." All it means is that my willful intention was to defraud. I hate to use the word within the definition, but my willful intention was to garner additional benefits to me that no one else in this world, or no one else in my circle for this particular event, depositing money, setting up a fake crypto deal, or mismanaging, I'm being kind, a government contract. No one else would have the opportunity to successfully complete that by doing it the right way. That's where it comes in.
That makes sense because it works against the capitalist nature of what we're all built upon. We're all built upon
exactly right.
We're all built upon benefits begetting benefits. Taxes. Yep. Taxes is a benefit that begets a benefit. You make money, you pay taxes. Everybody else earns off of the taxes that you pay. Right? It was funny. I was having this conversation with somebody recently who was talking. I stayed at a Ritz-Carlton, beautiful hotel, and I was talking to somebody who was complaining about how the owner of that Ritz-Carlton hotel, the one I was staying at, probably didn't have to pay taxes. He probably had a way of hiding his taxes. And I was like, do you really care about how much taxes that one guy has to pay? Right. Because if you think about it, there are 500 employees inside the Ritz-Carlton, and there's 5,000 guests inside the Ritz-Carlton. And guess what? All of us are paying. We're all paying income tax, state tax, property tax, the local, whatever
Social
tax.
Security, whatever the hell, tourism tax, everything else.
Do I care if the owner who created all this is like on a sailboat in the Mediterranean avoiding $300,000 in taxes? Do I really care? Not really, because this hotel is generating probably $3 million every month just in sales tax, property tax, and any other kind of tax associated with a hotel room.
100%, Andy. And fraud fraud affects every one of us, even though, you'll hear about these victimless crimes, in the healthcare world or in the auto insurance world. But bottom line is, if I go out and say that my car was sideswiped today and I collect off USAA for an insurance claim, they have to reset the reserves on sideswipes for uninsured motorist, activity. Guess who pays the penny each that goes into? Me and you.
Yeah.
So it's not victimless. Or healthcare, doctors who bill for services not provided. What does that do? Well, you know what? All right. So he said he did a 4-sided filling. He said he did, a cardiac stent, but he really just did a balloon and whatever. Bottom line is this, because the right procedure for that same person, when the insurance company gets billed, the insurance company says, well, we're not going to pay this, even though it's necessary, because the guy who's billing for services not rendered has ripped them off, the same guy off for the same service. That's fraud in a nutshell. That's as basic as I can make it.
Well, and that's beautiful, man. And it's beautiful because it makes it so clear. When you are garnering benefit that is not being shared, and you're doing it with willful intent, right? You know you're stealing. You
Yep.
know you're lying. You know you are collecting a benefit that you have not earned by returning equal value. I think that's a genius way of looking at it. And I know it's got some complex words.
Yeah.
It's very government terminology, but
Yes.
it does make sense now why it would be through the eyes of the Justice Department illegal to do that. Because if everybody did that, it would degrade and destroy our society.
Definitely, Andy. And I remember there was an instructor I had, I can't remember exactly where, but he explained it very simply to the entire class. And he said, if you wake up in the morning and you say, when I fill out my voucher for expenses as a government employee, I'm going to make sure I steal. I'm going to make my mind is, oh, those tolls, you know what? I don't really go through those toll booths in New Jersey, but I'm going to go ahead and write them in. That's fraud. All right. But if I'm at work one day and I happen to take a government pen and it's in my pocket and I get home and I put it in my drawer, did I intend to steal? Did I intend to commit fraud against the government? Did I, by definition? Yeah, I took a pen I probably wasn't supposed to have because the government Skillcraft has paid for that, right? Whatever number. That's the difference. So these guys get up in the morning and they say, "Oh, I could do something. I could make some money, and I'm not going to earn it."
From the TD bank teller
Mm-hmm.
accepting those $1 million cash payments, all the way to the cryptocurrency pump and dump market makers and these contractors who knowingly were stealing money out of the U.S. Air Force pocket. In every case, they fit that definition, and in every case, they're going to jail. So it's a win. It's a win, like you said, for
Big
Team
time.
America. Thank you, FBI. Thank you, Department of Justice, for doing what you're supposed to do and for giving us a good news story. If only mainstream media would put this in the mainstream. Instead, it's like section B or C of the old school paper newspaper.
Absolutely, Eddie. It's the truth, man. But yeah, this was great. I'm glad we could talk about it. I hope we helped some people out, and let us know if we could help you out. We're
Absolutely.
ready.
Jim, thanks so much for joining me. This was an awesome conversation to get into some of the successes against financial crime that we've seen recently. Folks, if you want to understand more about how Jim and I see problems, how we look at the headlines, how we view the world, go ahead and click on the description in the link below, and you'll visit a site at Everyday Spy where you'll get a chance to see how you are wired and what kind of spy you would be if you were able to join the Federal Investigative Services now. Folks, thank you very much, Jim. Again, I can't wait to have another conversation with you. Whether it's good news or bad news, man, it's always a good time.
Absolutely, Andy. Thanks a lot for having me.
See you, brother.